Hello, family. Welcome to Excited Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us also. Share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you, as you do so, sit back and relax as we dive into the story. They fired me to save money. Now I own the company. It started with an unexpected email. Subject line, mandatory staff meeting, 3 p.m. My stomach sank the moment I saw it. In my 8 years at Rotech Solutions, unplanned meetings almost always meant something bad. I stared at the screen, heart tapping out an uneasy rhythm. The email was vague, signed off with HR's cold, impersonal touch. I wasn't naive. Rumors had been floating for weeks. Budget cuts, downsizing, restructuring. The whispers in the break room had grown louder, laced with nervous laughter and denial. But I never thought it would reach me. I was a project lead, with a strong track record and glowing evaluations. If anything, I thought I'd be leaned on more during hard times. I still remember the hush that settled over the conference room as the VP walked in. Jeff Rollins, tall, polished, and stone-faced. Behind him was Dana from HR, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. There were about 30 of us in the room, and every eye followed them as they stood at the head of the table. Jeff cleared his throat. As you all know, we've been reviewing our operational costs. After a thorough analysis, the executive team has made some difficult decisions to ensure the long-term health of the company. He didn't pause for questions, just launched into a speech filled with corporate jargon. Right-sizing, streamlining, non-core redundancies. Every word sounded like a nail in a coffin. Then came the list. Dana began reading off names. My ears were buzzing so loud I almost didn't hear mine. Mark Davis. I blinked, frozen. A few heads turned toward me. I was too stunned to move. Me. Fired? You will receive individual HR packets and instructions by end of day. Your system access will be revoked at 5 p.m. today. And just like that, I was out. The meeting ended. No handshakes. No thanks for nearly a decade of work. Just cold stares and shuffled feet. My legs carried me back to my desk, but my mind was spiraling. I saw the looks, co-workers avoiding eye contact, unsure what to say. I packed up what I could into a cardboard box. A few photos, some books, a couple of coffee mugs. That was it. 8 years, reduced to a box. The worst part? No one stood up for me. Not even my manager, Cliff, who once called me the backbone of the engineering team. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. I sat in my car in the parking lot for nearly an hour after that, staring at the building. The place I'd given so much to. Late nights, missed birthdays, weekends ruined by system crashes I had to fix. Also, they could save money. I didn't go home right away. I drove around aimlessly, ending up at a quiet overlook outside, the city. That's where the reality finally hit me. I had no backup plan, no job lined up. Rent was due in 2 weeks. My savings were modest, just enough for a few months. I felt like I'd been gutted, but somewhere in that silence, sitting on the hood of my car with the city lights twinkling below, a thought crept in. Quiet, persistent, and angry. I know that company better than anyone. Their clients, their systems, their weaknesses. I helped build half their infrastructure, and they tossed me aside like trash. Maybe, just maybe I could turn this around. Not for revenge, at least not yet, but because I had to believe I wasn't worthless, that I wasn't just a line on a spreadsheet they could delete. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up, researching, looking at competitors, checking in on contacts I hadn't talked to in years. Ideas began forming like storm clouds. I didn't know it then, but that sleepless night marked the beginning of something massive. They thought firing me would save them money. They had no idea what they'd just ignited. The morning after I was fired, the silence in my apartment was louder than ever. No alarm, no emails, no buzz of a phone vibrating with endless Slack messages. Just me, a half-empty coffee mug, and a jobless reality setting in like fog. I spent the first 2 days in a strange blur, half grieving, half obsessing over every detail of how it all unfolded. I kept replaying the meeting in my head, dissecting Jeff's tone, Dana's rehearsed script, the way my name rolled off her tongue like it meant nothing. And each time, the sting deepened. But behind that sting, something else was growing, a flicker of determination fueled by sheer anger. I needed clarity, so I made a list. One column for skills: cloud architecture, cybersecurity audits, API, design, B2B client systems. Another for contacts, former colleagues, vendors, rival firms, and a final one, most important, for opportunities. I scanned job boards, tech forums, industry meetups. But more than anything, I was looking for cracks. Cracks in Rotech's system, places they'd struggle now that I was gone. By day 4, something caught my eye. A public post from a Rotech client, Midwest Freight Logistics, complaining about a delay in system support. I knew their backend like the back of my hand. I was the one who built their fleet tracking interface. I reached out casually through LinkedIn, offering help on a freelance basis. To my surprise, they responded within hours. "Mark, are you still with Rotech?" I replied, "Nope, not anymore, but I know your system better than anyone over there." They hesitated, only briefly, but after a quick call and a walkthrough of the issues, they hired me for a short-term contract. It wasn't much. 2 weeks of troubleshooting, but it paid more than I expected, and, more importantly, it felt like a spark, a small win, a reminder that I still had value. That night, I celebrated with cheap takeout and the loudest playlist I could put together. I wasn't just surviving, I was plotting. Midwest wasn't the only one. Over the next month, I reached out quietly to several Rotech clients. I didn't poach. I offered services where their new, streamlined team was now falling short. The feedback was nearly identical each time. They're slower. They outsource the support. No one knows what's going on. By month 2, I had 5 contracts. It was accidental at first, but a business was forming around me. I registered a small LLC, Davis Tech Consulting, built a lean website, paid for a basic invoicing platform, nothing flashy, just enough to look legit. I worked from my dining table surrounded by empty Red Bull cans and Post-it notes covered in ideas. I also started documenting everything I knew about Rotech's internal systems. Not confidential data, that would be illegal, but inefficiencies, overlooked client needs, technical debts they'd ignored for years. I knew where they were weak because I was the one who'd been patching the holes for 8 straight years. That knowledge became my competitive edge. And then something happened I didn't expect. One of the junior developers who had survived the cuts reached out to me. Her name was Priya. We had worked closely on several projects and she was brilliant, but underappreciated. She messaged me on Signal. "I think I'm next. Jeff's been holding closed-door meetings. I don't trust them." I offered her a contract, not full-time, just a few hours a week to help with a new client onboarding I had lined up. She accepted immediately. Priya was just the beginning. Over the next 3 months, I picked up 3 more former Rotech employees. All fired or voluntarily walked out. All skilled, all hungry. We weren't just freelancers anymore. We were a team. Rotech had created its own competitor without realizing it, but I knew something the others didn't yet. This wasn't going to stay small. I wasn't just building a lifeboat. I was building a ship that would soon sail right into Rotech's harbor and take over. By month 4, we were no longer just doing okay, we were gaining ground. Davis Tech was growing. We weren't a major threat yet, not on paper, but we were lean, fast, and reliable. Something Rotech hadn't been in years. Our clients didn't care that we were small. They cared that we got things done. But I still hadn't made a real move. I'd been playing defense, picking up crumbs they'd dropped. That changed when I received a message from a name I hadn't heard in years, Leon Garcia, an old mentor from my first job out of college. He now headed procurement at a logistics tech company, Transmart Systems, one of Rotech's top 5 accounts. "Mark," his message read, "heard you're flying solo now. You up for a serious conversation?" I called him that same day. "Rotech's been slipping," Leon said. "No pleasantries. Their last system upgrade pushed us back 2 months, and they want to charge us for the mess." He paused. "Can you do what they're doing? Better?" My heart was racing. "Better, cheaper, faster," I said without hesitation. "I already know your system, Leon. I built the API they're butchering." He didn't laugh. He just said, "Send me a proposal." It was the biggest swing I'd taken. I didn't sleep for 2 nights, pulling together every ounce of polish and professionalism I could muster. I walked Leon and his team through it over Zoom, screen-sharing mock-ups, walking them through phased support plans, contingency protocols, security enhancements. 2 weeks later, we signed a $750,000 annual contract. It was more money than I'd made in the last 4 years combined, and it marked the beginning of something undeniable. When Rotech got wind of it, I heard through the grapevine that Jeff Rollins went ballistic. Transmart was one of their oldest clients. Losing them to a team of ex-employees was not only embarrassing, it was dangerous. Suddenly, Davis Tech was on their radar. They didn't waste time responding. I started getting legal letters, nothing solid, just intimidating language, accusations of breach of contract, suggestions that I was using confidential information, veiled threats. I had anticipated this. Everything we'd done was clean, no stolen data, no proprietary code, no poaching under contract. I'd run every agreement through a lawyer I paid out of pocket, every document, every timeline. I was careful, so I sent them a single reply. We operate with integrity. If you have specific claims, outline them. Otherwise, cease further intimidation. They didn't follow up. Instead, they launched a PR campaign trying to win back confidence. I saw press releases, new branding, recycled leadership promises about innovation, and customer-first strategies. It all rang hollow. Meanwhile, we doubled down on delivery. Priya took over development leadership and recruited another software engineer from her network. Emil, a quiet genius who could rebuild an entire back-end architecture in his sleep. We moved into a shared co-working space downtown. Small, but professional. With Leon's contract funding us, I could finally offer the team decent pay. And then came the moment that told me things were really shifting. A mid-level Rotech client, Greengate, Analytics, reached out directly. They said, "We saw what you did for Transmart. We're thinking of switching." It wasn't just about me anymore. We were getting a reputation. I held weekly team meetings, short, focused, but full of energy. I told them straight, this isn't about revenge. It's about excellence. We're not trying to burn Rotech down. We're just showing the world what good work looks like. But deep down, I wanted more than excellence. I wanted the people who sat at that long glass conference table, nodding along while Dana read my name off a list, to see me at the other side of that table one day, with their fate in my hands. It was no longer a dream. It was a goal, and I had just taken the first real step toward it. Success has a way of attracting attention, and not always the good kind. As Davis Tech grew, I started noticing strange things. Vendors I'd worked with for years suddenly re-evaluating partnerships. Clients we'd nearly signed began ghosting me just before contract closure. Then I found out that Rotech was actively trying to squeeze me out of the market. They couldn't sue me, so they smeared me. Quietly, subtly. They told the clients I was unstable, that I had been let go for performance issues, that my team was underqualified, or worse, unprofessional freelancers with no security protocols. They were trying to poison the well I was drinking from. For a while, I panicked. I questioned every move I made. I thought about backing off. But then something strange happened. I got a message from a current Rotech employee. Not Priya this time. A senior developer still on their payroll. "You don't know me, but I've been following your work. What you're doing is impressive. If you ever have an opening, I'd love to talk." That was the moment it hit me. I had leverage. Rotech didn't just fear losing clients. They feared losing their people. And worse, they feared me becoming a symbol of everything they'd lost. Talent, innovation, loyalty. The more they tried to shut me down, the more people saw the truth. So I leaned in. We started producing case studies, real stories from clients. We'd helped, before and after performance metrics, security upgrades, uptime stats. I hired a marketing freelancer to dress it all up with sharp graphics and shareable insights. Within a month, we were getting over 1,000 visits a day to our site. Then I did something bold. I started offering transition packages. If a company was stuck in a poorly managed contract with Rotech, we'd evaluate it for free and provide a migration roadmap. No obligation, no strings attached. Word spread fast. That's when the real shift happened. One of Rotech's biggest enterprise clients, Galtcom Energy, reached out through a back channel. They didn't contact me directly. A consultant they worked with, Sarah Leung, reached out on their behalf. "Mark," she said, "they're unhappy. They've been locked into a long-term deal that isn't delivering. You've become an option." It was the biggest opportunity yet. Galtcom had a multi-million-dollar contract. If we could prove ourselves capable of handling a portion of their infrastructure, even just a pilot project, it would open floodgates. I told Sarah the truth. "We're small, but we're focused. Give us something critical and time-sensitive. We'll show you what we can do." She hesitated. "I'll talk to them." 2 weeks later, we were handed a 6-week sprint, migrating Galtcom's real-time monitoring dashboard for their offshore operations. High stakes, zero room for error. I called an emergency team meeting. "Look, this is big," I told them. "Not just in money, in reputation. We pull this off, we're not just a boutique firm anymore. We're contenders." We worked around the clock. Emil coded through the nights. Priya managed the sprint like a battle-hardened general. I was on calls daily, handling client expectations and making sure we hit every target. And we did. 6 weeks later, Galtcom's new system went live. Faster, cleaner, and more stable than anything Rotech had delivered in years. Sarah called me afterward. "They're impressed," she said. "And more importantly, they're talking. Suddenly, we weren't a whisper anymore. We were a conversation." Then one morning, while reviewing our inbox, I saw it, an email from an investment group. "We've been tracking your progress. Are you open to funding conversations?" I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure. We'd grown organically without outside help. But now the conversation was changing. If I wanted to truly compete with Rotech, not just steal their clients but replace them at the top, I'd need more than talent. I'd need capital. I scheduled a call with the investors. As I prepared for it, I glanced at an old photo on my desk. Me, smiling in a Rotech hoodie, back when I believed loyalty was mutual. That guy was gone. In his place stood someone sharper, smarter, hungrier, and soon, a lot more powerful. When I first started Davis Tech, the idea of bringing in outside investors was a non-starter. I wanted freedom. No board meetings, no diluted vision, no pressure to hit growth metrics at the expense of quality. But standing on the edge of a real chance to unseat Rotech, I realized something. To beat giants, you sometimes need armor, and money buys armor. The investment firm that contacted me was Vanguard Dynamics, a mid-sized private equity group, known for backing niche disruptors in the tech space. We set up a pitch meeting for the following Monday. I spent the weekend obsessing over every detail. Revenue charts, client testimonials, our growth trajectory, even our projected savings compared to Rotech's bloated budget structure. I didn't just want funding. I wanted validation. I wanted someone with financial muscle to see what I saw. A company that could transform the industry by being everything Rotech had failed to be. On Monday morning, I wore my best shirt, the one I used to save for boardroom presentations back when I still had a cubicle and a boss. I logged into the video call early and waited, staring at my own reflection, wondering if I looked like a CEO or just a guy trying to play one. 3 people joined. Miles Carter, the managing partner, Teresa Nguyen, head of due diligence, and a third guy who never said a word but took a lot of notes. Miles had that calm, calculating tone of someone who's seen thousands of deals but rarely says yes. "So, Mark," he began, "you're a rising thorn in Rotech's side. That's a good start. Tell us how far this can really go." I walked them through everything, our client wins, our technical edge, our team's story. But I saved the best for last. I showed them our competitive analysis, the one Emil and I had spent nights preparing. We'd broken down Rotech's top 5 clients, their weaknesses, their pricing tiers, and, most importantly, where we could undercut them while offering better service. When I was done, Teresa spoke up. "Your numbers are tight. Your delivery track record is excellent. But you're small. How do we know you can scale without collapsing?" I didn't flinch. "We're small because we've been precise. I haven't rushed this. I've built a team that can lead, not just follow. What we need now is infrastructure. More engineers, better tools, a marketing push, We can handle the clients. We just need to handle the growth. Miles leaned forward. What's your ask? I took a breath. $2 million for 20% equity. I want a partner, not a babysitter. There was silence, long enough that I started to second-guess myself. Then Miles smiled. Bold, but fair. They didn't decide on the spot. Of course not. But 2 days later, I got the email. Term sheet attached. I had to read it 3 times before it sank in. They were in. The valuation was even higher than I expected. Suddenly, I had a war chest. We moved fast. I hired a seasoned operations lead to handle scaling. We brought in 2 more engineers and a part-time CFO to manage the financial chaos that was coming. I upgraded our tiny office to a floor in a shared tech hub. Glass walls, fast Wi-Fi, free, coffee, the works. Clients noticed. So did competitors, and so did Jeff Rollins. I got a call from a blocked number one evening while leaving the office. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mark," a familiar voice said. "It's Jeff." I stopped walking. "I heard about the funding," he continued. "Congrats. Big step." I didn't reply. He chuckled. "You know, we never wanted things to end badly. Maybe it's time we talked." I finally spoke. "Talk? Or warn me?" There was a pause. "Let's not make this a war. We're open to discussions, partnerships, maybe even acquisition, if the numbers make sense." I couldn't believe it. The man who'd signed my termination letter was now suggesting a buyout. I smiled, unseen. "Thanks for the call, Jeff, but I'm not interested in going backward." He sighed. "Be careful, Mark. Growing fast can make you fragile. So can underestimating the wrong person." I hung up. That call didn't scare me. It fueled me. Because now I knew they were watching, and they were nervous. The tables were turning. And soon, I wouldn't just be their competitor, I'd be their replacement. The phone call from Jeff was just the beginning. Within weeks, Rotech made it clear they weren't going to play nice anymore. They started aggressively undercutting our bids, offering emergency discounts to clients we were negotiating with. Old contacts of mine began forwarding me emails from Rotech reps, emails full of condescending lines like, "Don't trust startups with no runway," and "You deserve experience, not experiments." It was laughable. They were desperate. But I wasn't going to fight them by reacting. I had a better plan, a bigger one. It began with a single target, Everlyn Corp., a 10-year logistics client that had been with Rotech for nearly a decade. I knew their CTO, Danny Morales, from an old project we did together. Smart, skeptical, and brutally honest. If I could win her over, the rest would fall into place. I scheduled a meeting and flew out personally. Danny wasn't impressed by the fancy pitch deck. She didn't care about our recent funding or slick office photos. "I want to know what happens when things go wrong," she said, arms crossed. "That's where Rotech failed. You can outcode them, sure, but can you outlast them when the fire hits?" I told her the truth. "We've had fires. I'm not going to pretend we haven't. But when it happens, we're in the trenches with our clients, not hiding behind ticket numbers. You'll never have to chase us down. We chase problems down before they grow." She raised an eyebrow. "That sounds great, but you're still small." "Not small," I said, leaning forward. "Just fast and hungry." 2 weeks later, we got the contract, a $1.2 million annual deal with a 6-month performance review clause. It was the biggest client we'd landed to date, and the first domino. Because Everlyn's migration wasn't just a quiet backdoor transition. It was loud. Danny gave a full interview in Tech Systems Today, detailing why she chose Davis Tech and why Rotech's legacy systems were too slow to evolve. The article went viral in our space, and just like that, Davis Tech became the story. Investors started calling again. Journalists wanted interviews. Mid-tier tech podcasts asked me to speak. Suddenly, I wasn't just the guy who got fired. I was the guy who beat his old company at their own game. And then, the opportunity of a lifetime landed in my inbox. A tech conglomerate was preparing to acquire Rotech. They were doing due diligence and quietly reaching out to major competitors to assess the landscape. Someone from the group contacted me anonymously, asking if I'd be open to a strategic discussion. It didn't take a genius to read between the lines. I called my lawyer, then my CFO, then my team. What if, I told them, instead of just beating Rotech, we bought them? At first, everyone thought I was joking, but I wasn't. With our growth, our funding, and now Everlyn on board, we had leverage. And the acquisition firm? They were looking for a way to avoid a messy deal with Rotech's outdated leadership and bloated structure. If we could offer a cleaner package, they'd listen. So we put together a counter-proposal. We didn't offer billions. We didn't need to. We offered a lean buyout of core Rotech assets, their data infrastructure, their engineering IP, and select client contracts. We didn't want their management. We didn't want their legacy mess. We wanted the heart of what still worked, and we wanted to rebuild it right. It was audacious. It was aggressive. It was exactly what the acquisition firm was looking for. They bid. In a matter of weeks, we were in deep negotiations. Lawyers on both sides, audits, projections, confidentiality clauses. It was the most intense, emotionally draining period of my life. But one morning, at 8:43 a.m., I received the email that would change everything. Final terms approved. You are now the primary acquirer of Rotech Systems operating assets. I sat back in my chair, stunned. The company that fired me to save money. I now owned, not the whole company, just the best parts. The rest, I left behind, like the dead. Wait, it was. My team celebrated that night. Champagne, toasts, even a cake with "Who's Fired Now" written in frosting. But I didn't feel vengeful. I felt complete. The war was over, and I had won. Owning the core of Rotech wasn't just a business victory. It was a personal reckoning. The acquisition was finalized on a Friday morning, and by Monday, I was walking through the familiar glass doors of the old Rotech headquarters, not as an employee, but as its new owner. Everything looked the same. The lobby art, the dull carpeting, even the receptionist, who looked up at me with wide eyes and whispered, "Mark?" I gave her a warm nod. "Good morning, Denise. I'm just here for a walkthrough." Her mouth fell open slightly, but she didn't stop me. I toured the offices slowly, room by room. I passed the very desk where I'd once sat, furiously typing out project plans and debugging broken code for clients who never knew my name. I passed the break room where I'd once overheard executives laughing about cutting dead weight while I ate lunch alone. And then I entered the conference room where I'd been fired. It was empty now, cleaned out, the long table polished, the chairs tucked in, but the air still felt thick. I closed the door behind me and stood at the head of the table looking out the window. It was the same view I remembered. Gray skyline, rows of concrete, buildings, the faint hum of traffic below. Only now the view felt different. A soft knock broke my reflection. Priya poked her head in. "They're ready." I followed her into the adjacent boardroom, our boardroom now, where the remaining Rotech staff we'd retained were waiting to meet the new leadership. There were about 20 of them. Engineers, project managers, and a few junior executives who'd jumped at the chance to stay under new management. I introduced myself simply. No ego, no posturing. Some of you know me, some of you don't. My name is Mark Davis. I used to work here. I was let go in this very building. Now, I'm here to build something better. With your help. There was a ripple of tension across the room. Then hands began to rise with questions. What's going to happen to our projects? Will we be working with Davis Tech's team? Are there layoffs coming? I answered honestly. We're merging systems, not replacing people. If you're here, it's because we believe in your value. We want to keep what works, rebuild what doesn't, and treat people like humans again. You're not just headcount. You're contributors. That starts now. The mood shifted. People nodded. Some looked relieved. Others, skeptical. That was fine. I didn't need immediate loyalty. I needed time and results. The weeks that followed were intense. Integration meetings, system overhauls, new protocols. But slowly, things began to click. We brought Rotech's surviving clients into our care, one by one, and each began to see what Davis Tech had always promised: speed, honesty, attention. One day, Emil stopped by my office, now the corner suite where Jeff used to sit. "You really did it," he said, grinning. "You actually took the dragon's castle." I chuckled. "Only the part's worth keeping." He dropped a file on my desk. "You might want to see this." It was a notice of resignation. From Jeff Rollins. He was walking away from the shell that was left behind. He'd tried to fight the transition internally but met resistance from the parent firm, which now preferred our streamlined operation to his old empire of redundancy. His note was short, clipped, not even addressed to me. I didn't need it to be. His absence was all the closure I needed. Later that afternoon, I stood by the big window in the CEO office. The skyline hadn't changed, but everything else had. I wasn't here because I'd schemed my way to the top. I was here because I refused to stop building when others gave up, because I believed in people, my team, my vision, and even myself, when Rotech didn't. Now, the people in this building looked to me for direction, and I wasn't going to let them down. 6 months after the acquisition, Davis Tech had transformed. What started in a cramped apartment with a whiteboard and a refurbished laptop had become a true force in the industry. We weren't just keeping pace with giants, we were becoming one. But we were doing it differently. Every Friday, we held a standing all-hands meeting, virtual for remote staff, in person for those in the office. No PowerPoint decks, no stiff speeches, just real updates, real talk, and it became a tradition, a time for celebrating wins, learning from losses, and staying grounded. One Friday, I walked into the meeting room early, coffee in hand, and saw something that stopped me in my tracks. A group of junior engineers, many of whom I'd hired straight, out of college, were sketching ideas on a glass wall, animated, collaborative, challenging each other with curiosity instead of competition. It hit me then. This was the culture I had once dreamed of, and now it was real. After the meeting, I got a message from Danny Morales at Everlyn, the CTO who had taken a chance on us. She'd just finished rolling out our latest integration and said it was the smoothest deployment she'd experienced in her 15-year career. Her message ended with, "This is what tech should be." That one line meant more to me than any balance sheet ever could. Later that afternoon, I found myself staring at the plaque we'd hung outside the conference room, the same room where I'd been fired. It read, "Progress grows where people are believed in." Every time someone asked how we'd turned things around, I gave the same answer. We believed in people before profit, in service before size, in values before valuation. The rest followed. One day, while reviewing quarterly numbers with Priya, she glanced up and smiled. "You know what we never did?" she asked. "What?" "We never threw it back in their face." I laughed. "You mean Jeff? Or Rotech?" "Both." I paused. "We didn't need to. Success talks louder than revenge." Still, the press hadn't forgotten the story. One article had gone viral under the headline, "From Fired to Founder, the man who bought the company that let him go." I didn't love the drama of it, but I understood why people connected with it. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about proving your worth when someone else tried to erase it. In a world where employees were often treated like line items, we'd built a place where people mattered, where talent didn't get buried under bureaucracy, where "you're too expensive" was replaced with "you're worth every cent." One morning, I received a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a short note. "Mark, I was wrong. About the layoffs. About you. I let fear of the board override my instincts. Congratulations on doing what I couldn't. Jay." It didn't take much to guess it was from Jeff. I folded it and tucked it into my desk drawer, not out of spite, but because some things are worth remembering. Not to hold on to the pain, but to honor the journey. Because every betrayal, every late night, every moment of doubt had brought me here. We eventually opened 2 more offices, one in Austin, another in Seattle. Each one designed with open spaces, collaborative zones, and, yes, even a wall where employees could write their own quotes about what success meant to them. And mine, it was simple. They fired me to save money. I built a company to save people. That became the legacy, not the acquisition, not the headlines, But the people who showed up, stayed loyal, built boldly, and never stopped believing in the work, in each other, and in themselves. The company was no longer mine alone. It was ours, and no boardroom could take that away again.